A young millionaire let a homeless girl stay over, and what he saw the next morning shocked him. The heavy rain pounded against the windshield like a dramatic symphony of nature. The sleek, luxury car glided through the deserted streets of New York, but the sound of raindrops still seeped into the serene interior, mingling with the soft classical music playing from its high-end speakers. Kang, a self-made young millionaire, gripped the steering wheel tightly, his eyes fixed on the rain-soaked road ahead. He had just left a lavish gala, filled with shallow small talk and meaningless social exchanges. Yet, instead of satisfaction, he was overwhelmed by a hollow emptiness. Behind the polished image of a successful man, he was struggling with an indescribable loneliness. As he stopped at a red light, his gaze drifted to the sidewalk. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, a young girl huddled under the awning of a closed shop. Her frail body was wrapped in a tattered coat, her wet hair clinging to her pale, gaunt face. Her distant eyes seemed to hold a storm as fierce as the one raging outside. Her small shoulders trembled in the cold rain. Kang felt a sudden pang in his heart. He had seen countless homeless people on the streets of New York, and like most, he had trained himself to ignore them and move on with his life. But there was something about this girl that struck a chord within him. Perhaps her youth, or the way her fragile figure shivered in the cold. Or maybe it was a vague, unshakable familiarity she evoked in him. A blaring horn from the car behind snapped him out of his thoughts. The traffic light had turned green. He pressed the gas pedal, trying to leave the image of the girl behind. "Not my business," he muttered, turning up the music. Yet, no matter how loud the music played, he couldn't shake the image of her small, trembling frame and hauntingly empty eyes from his mind. "It's not my problem," Kang repeated to himself, but deep down his heart seemed to have a different answer. The car screeched to a sudden halt, skidding slightly on the rain-slicked road. Kang's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the storm raging inside him. "Damn it," he muttered under his breath, shifting into reverse. Moments later, he pulled over by the curb and stepped out into the freezing rain. The icy wind and raindrops soaked through his tailored suit, but he paid no attention. "Hey," he called out, his voice rougher than he intended. The girl flinched, her wide eyes lifting to meet his. They were filled with wariness, the look of a cornered animal. "I'm not here to hurt you," Kang said quickly, raising his hands in a gesture of reassurance. "You'll freeze to death out here. Do you have anywhere to go?" She shook her head, her lips trembling. "I'm fine," she whispered, her voice so soft it was nearly drowned out by the rain. "No, you're not," Kang interrupted, his tone firmer than he expected. Running a hand through his wet hair, frustration surged within him. "Listen, I'm not asking you to trust me, but you can't stay here. Come with me, at least for tonight." Her eyes narrowed, suspicion etched across her pale face. "Why do you care?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. Why did he care? He didn't know her, owed her nothing. Yet behind her skepticism and emotional walls, a memory stirred. A younger version of himself, cold and desperate, yearning for salvation. "I just want to help," he finally said, his voice softening. "It's your choice, yes or no." She stared at him for a long moment, her gaze locked onto his face. Finally, she gave a cautious nod. Kang slipped off his coat and draped it over her fragile shoulders. "Let's go," he said, leading her to his car. Inside, the silence was heavy. The girl sat huddled in the passenger seat, clutching his coat like a shield against the outside world. Kang focused on the road, but his mind swirled with conflicting thoughts. "What's your name?" he asked, breaking the silence. "Lin," she replied, her voice barely audible. "Andai, Ling. You look like you need a hot meal and a dry place to sleep. My house isn't far." Lin glanced at him, her eyes filled with mistrust. "Why are you doing this?" Kang sighed, gripping the steering wheel tighter. "Maybe because someone once helped me when I needed it most. Maybe it's my turn to do the same." They arrived at Kang's home, a spacious, warm villa that stood in stark contrast to the cold rain outside. Lin hesitated at the door, her wet shoes leaving small puddles on the marble floor. "You can sleep on the couch," Kang said, pulling a soft blanket from a closet. "The bathroom's down the hall if you need it. I'll grab some dry clothes for you." Lynn took the blanket, her face unreadable. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice as faint as a breeze. Kang paused, the sincerity in her tone catching him off guard. He nodded before heading upstairs. That night, Kang lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Images of Lynn curled up on the couch under the blanket replayed in his mind. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he felt certain of one thing. His actions tonight had set something in motion, something he couldn't yet understand. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, casting a gentle glow over the kitchen. Kang woke up, descended the stairs, and froze at the sight before him. The kitchen, usually cluttered and ignored because he rarely cooked, was spotless. On the counter sat a plate of eggs and toast, neatly arranged beside a steaming cup of coffee. Next to it lay a folded piece of paper, creased as though it had been held tightly before being placed there. Kang picked up the note and unfolded it. The handwriting was neat, but slightly shaky, each word written with care. "Thank you for giving me shelter. I couldn't stay long, but I wanted to do something to show my gratitude. You saved me in more ways than you know." His fingers tightened around the note as he looked out the window. Lynn was gone, but the small gesture she left behind lingered, filling the house with an unexpected warmth. "Khan, I don't know how to thank you for what you did for me. It's been so long since anyone showed me kindness, and it truly meant the world to me. You didn't have to stop your car last night, but you did, and because of you, I had a roof over my head and a warm place to sleep. That means more to me than I can put into words. I don't want to overstay or burden you any further. People like me don't belong in places like this. I don't want you to feel obligated or uncomfortable because of me. I hope that one day I can repay life by helping someone else, just like you helped me. Thank you for reminding me that not everyone has given up on people like me. Ling." Kang read the note twice, the words sinking deep into his heart. He set it down on the counter, his eyes drifting to the plate of eggs and toast she had prepared. It wasn't a fancy meal, but it carried profound meaning. Lynn could have taken anything from his home. His wallet, car keys, or watch were all within reach. But instead, she had chosen to clean, cook, and leave a heartfelt message without asking for anything in return. He let out a heavy sigh, the tightness in his chest making it hard to breathe. His house, always quiet and empty, now felt lonelier than ever. The decision. In the following days, Kang couldn't stop thinking about Lynn. The note remained on the kitchen counter, a silent reminder of her brief presence. He told himself his actions that night were just a kind gesture on a rainy evening. But deep down, he knew it was more than that. Kang started searching for Lynn. He drove through the streets, stopping at shelters and areas where the homeless gathered. He asked questions and followed leads to parks and subway stations, but she was nowhere to be found. The city felt like a labyrinth, each corner leaving him more frustrated and exhausted. On the fifth day, when hope was wearing thin, he found her. The diner encounter. Kang walked into a small diner on the city's outskirts, more out of exhaustion than expectation. He took a seat near the window and ordered a coffee. The diner was simple. Worn leather booths, flickering lights, and the faint smell of grease in the air. Then he saw her. Lynn stood behind the counter, her hair tied back in a simple ponytail. She wore an oversized apron and carried a tray of dishes with steady focus. She looked tired but determined, stronger than when he had first met her. "Lynn," Kang called softly, his voice almost breaking. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. A moment of silence hung between them before she spoke. "Kang, what are you doing here?" "I've been looking for you," he admitted, his tone earnest. "Are you okay?" Lynn glanced around, her eyes darting to the customers before returning to him. "I'm fine," she said quickly. "I'm working." King didn't take his eyes off her. "Can we talk? Just for a moment." She hesitated, then nodded. She asked a co-worker to cover for her and walked over to sit across from him. The conversation. Kang started, "Why did you leave?" Lynn sighed, her shoulders sagging. "Because I don't belong in your world, Kang. Yours and mine are too different. But you didn't give me a chance to help you," he said, frustration evident in his voice. "You already did," she countered. "You gave me a place to sleep, a meal, and more kindness than I deserved. But I couldn't stay. I don't want to be anyone's burden. You were never a burden, Kang said firmly. And you don't have to do this alone. Lynn shook her head, her voice steady but pained. I've been alone for a long time. That's just how it is for people like me. And that's okay. Well, you gave me hope, Kang. Hope that maybe someday things can change, but I have to do this on my own. Kang looked at her, his resolve hardening. If you ever need help, I'll be here. No conditions, no expectations. Just don't disappear again. Lynn smiled faintly, her eyes softening. Thank you, Kang, for everything. Moving forward, as Kang left the diner, his heart felt heavier, but fuller. He knew he couldn't force Lynn to stay or accept more help than she was ready for. But he also knew their paths had crossed for a reason. For Lynn, the encounter was a reminder that kindness could exist even in the harshest of circumstances. For Kang, it was a wake-up call that sometimes helping someone meant more than offering material comfort. It meant believing in them when they couldn't believe in themselves. The conversation at the diner. Kang looked at Lynn, trying to keep his voice calm, though his gaze was resolute. You're not a burden, Lynn. I want to help you. Not out of pity, but because I see something special in you. Strength and resilience, even if you don't realize it yet. Lynn let out a faint laugh, her smile tinged with sadness and a hint of cynicism. I'm not strong. I'm just trying to survive like everyone else. Kang leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving hers. But you didn't take the easy way out. You could have taken everything from me, but you didn't. That says a lot about your character. Lynn looked down, her fingers absent-mindedly tracing the edge of the table. I don't want to depend on anyone. I want to stand on my own. There's nothing wrong with accepting help, Lynn, Kang said, his voice steady but kind. It doesn't make you weak. It just shows that we're human, and humans need each other. Lynn was silent, her gaze distant as though wrestling with inner turmoil. After a long pause, she looked up at him. Why do you care so much about me? You barely know me. Kang hesitated before speaking the truth. Because I've been where you are. I know what it feels like to fight the world alone. But someone helped me, and because of that, my life changed. Now I want to do the same for you. Lynn sighed, her shoulders relaxing as if a weight had been partially lifted. All right, she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. I'll give it a try, but only if I can repay you someday. Kang chuckled, the tension between them easing. Deal. You just try, and I'll help guide you. The first steps. Kang arranged a small apartment for Lynn near his workplace. Despite her insistence on paying back the deposit, he supported her in settling in. Lynn started working as an assistant at Kang's company, learning from the simplest tasks. At first, she felt overwhelmed by the fast-paced work environment and the complex business jargon. But Kang was always patient, guiding her step by step, never letting her feel inadequate. One evening, as they worked late at the office, Kang leaned back in his chair and let out a light laugh. You're picking things up faster than I expected, he remarked, his eyes gleaming with pride. Lynn looked up from her notebook, where she was jotting down important notes. Really, Kang affirmed with a smile. I'm impressed by how quickly you're catching on. She smiled faintly, her cheeks flushing. Thank you. I'm just trying not to mess things up. You won't, Kang said firmly. And even if you do, it's just part of the learning process. Discovering hidden talent. Another evening, while tidying up, Kang stumbled upon Lynn's sketchbook. He opened it to find a meticulously detailed drawing of the city skyline bathed in the golden hues of a sunset. Did you draw this? Kang asked, holding up the sketchbook. Lynn froze, her eyes wide. Oh, it's just random stuff. It's nothing special. Nothing special? Kang repeated, his surprise evident. Lynn, it's incredible. You have real talent. She shrugged, looking embarrassed. It's just a hobby. I've been drawing since I was little, but I never thought much of it. Don't sell yourself short, Kang said seriously. Have you ever considered pursuing it seriously? Lynn shook her head. I wouldn't even know where to start. Besides, I have too much on my plate right now. Kang studied her, a thoughtful expression on his face. If you ever change your mind, let me know. I think the world needs to see your talent. The journey to passion. Kang's encouragement planted a seed in Lynn's mind. From simple sketches, she began dedicating more time to refining her artwork. Months later, with Kang's support, Lin held a small exhibition showcasing her pieces. The event drew attention, and Lin received invitations to collaborate with publishers and designers. Standing in the brightly lit gallery, surrounded by her artwork, Lin felt a mix of pride and gratitude. Kang walked up to her, smiling softly. "I told you, the world needed to see your talent." Lin smiled back, her eyes filled with determination. "Thank you, Kang. If it weren't for you, I would have never dared to dream this big." "Don't thank me," Kang said. "This is your journey. I just helped you see what you're capable of." Lin's journey was only beginning, but she knew that with belief in herself and the right support, she could reach heights she'd never imagined before. The gallery's glow. Months later, Lin stood at the center of a small art exhibition where her paintings and sketches adorned the walls. The room buzzed with conversation as guests paused to admire her work, their eyes reflecting awe and appreciation. From a quiet corner, Kang watched her with pride. Lin was radiant, her newfound confidence shining as she engaged with the crowd. The idea for this exhibition had been Kang's. When he first suggested it, Lin hesitated, shaking her head. "No one would care about my drawings," she had said. But Kang was determined. He leveraged his connections to organize the event, creating a platform for her talent to be recognized. Now, as he watched the guests marvel at Lin's art, Kang felt an overwhelming sense of satisfaction. This was her moment, and she deserved every bit of it. From across the room, Lin caught his gaze and smiled. Excusing herself from the group, she walked toward him. "This feels unreal," she said, her voice filled with emotion. "I still feel like I'm dreaming." Kang chuckled, his tone playful. "Believe it, Lin. This is all you. You made it happen." Lin shook her head, her eyes glistening. "If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be standing here today." "Don't downplay your effort," Kang replied gently. "The talent was always within you. I just helped you see it." Lin hesitated, then spoke, her voice trembling with gratitude. "Thank you, Kang, for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Kang smiled warmly, his gaze steady. "You've changed my life more than you realize, Lin. Thank you for walking into it." The moment by the shore. A few weeks later, they found themselves standing side by side on a quiet beach. Gentle waves lapped at the shore as the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. "It's beautiful," Lin murmured, her voice soft against the sea breeze. "It is," Kang agreed, his eyes fixed on the horizon. They stood in comfortable silence, letting the sound of the waves fill the space between them. "What's next for you?" Kang asked suddenly, turning to look at her. Lin smiled, her gaze resolute. "I want to keep creating and sharing my art with the world. And I want to help others, just like you helped me. There are so many people out there who just need someone to believe in them." Kang's chest swelled with pride. "You're going to do amazing things, Lin. I have no doubt about that." Lin turned to him, her eyes sparkling in the twilight. "What about you, Kang? What's next for you?" Kang laughed softly, looking down at the sand. "Honestly, I'm still figuring that out. But for the first time in years, I feel like I'm on the right path." Lin reached out and took his hand, giving it a gentle squeeze. "Whatever path you choose, I know you'll follow it with all your heart." Kang smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "Thanks to you, I've found it again." They stood there, the warmth of their connection contrasting with the cool evening breeze. The past felt like a distant memory, while the future stretched before them, bright and full of promise. A story of redemption. This wasn't just a tale of a young woman rediscovering herself or a man rekindling his humanity. It was the story of two people saving each other in ways neither could have anticipated. As the waves washed away their footprints in the sand, one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. This story reminds us that even the smallest acts of kindness can create profound change, not only in the lives of others, but also within ourselves. Sometimes, helping someone else find their light is how we rediscover our own. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story.